I used to think that in order to live below my means, I had to be miserable, that I was only allowed to pay my bills, and then every other dollar I had was supposed to go towards savings. But that really wasn't the case. And by changing this negative mindset around living below my means, I was able to free up a lot more money for fun and still be on track to hit my financial goals quicker. I've tried several strategies over the years for cutting my expenses and keeping more money in my pocket. And today I'm going to share my favorites with you. I'm going to start off with the big three. For most of us, our biggest expenses are going to be housing, food, and transportation. So, reducing these three expenses is going to have the biggest impact. So, to start with housing, the way that I'm currently saving money in this area is by living in my friend's mom's basement in order to keep my rent low. Right now, I'm paying $500 a month for rent, and that's all inclusive, even including internet. If I were to be living in an apartment on my own, I could easily be paying $1,500 a month. If I were to factor in things like parking, utilities, and internet, I'd be paying closer to $2,000 a month just to have a roof over my head. So, by making this one choice, I'm able to save between $1,000 and $1,500 a month. It's definitely not the most glamorous way to live, but that's not as important to me as saving $12,000 to $18,000 a year that I can then put towards buying my own home. If you happen to own your own home but want to cut down on your housing costs, you could rent out your basement or rent out a room to somebody. I know a former teacher of mine actually did this. She rented out two of the rooms in her house, and that allowed her to continue working part time. Obviously, it's good to get to know anybody that you're going to be living with because even though saving money is great, you still want to make sure that you're living in a safe situation and that you're not coming home every day miserable to be in your own home. But if you're struggling to pay your mortgage or simply want some more breathing room in your budget, this could be something that's worth looking into. On the other hand, if you're somebody who rents, you can try reducing your living expenses by negotiating your rent, especially if you're close to renewing your lease. This is something that my brother did recently. His lease was coming up, and he spoke with his landlord and let them know that he wasn't going to be able to continue staying there because he had to spend at least $200 less per month on rent in order to have that fit with his budget. And his landlord ended up saying, well, you know what? We can reduce your rent by $200 if that'll make you stay. So, two important things that I think he had going into this conversation with his landlord was one, he had a number in mind already. He already knew he needed $200 less so he could be specific. And then on the other hand, he also had a valid reason. He simply couldn't afford it. And because he's a good tenant, they didn't want to go through the headache of having to find somebody new. So I think that's something to just keep in mind. If you are going to negotiate, have a set hard number in mind and have a reason, something that, it wouldn't really make sense for them to argue with. And worst case scenario, they say no. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. And if you do happen to still need to find a new place, this could be a good opportunity to downsize and live in a smaller apartment that's also cheaper. And this doesn't have to be forever. This could just be something that you do for a year or two in order to kind of get back on your feet and improve your financial situation so that when you do move into a nicer place, you're still able to keep your head above water. Or if you're living in a big city, another option here could be to live in a smaller town just outside of the city. A lot of times it tends to be a lot cheaper there, and you could still potentially have just as big or nice of a place, but for less money, just by living slightly farther away. And finally, another way to reduce your living expenses could be through utilities. So I know this isn't the same everywhere, but I live in Ontario, and here electricity costs more during different parts of the day. So I believe it's something like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. are the peak hours where it costs the most. So if your city has a similar system in place, it's good to know when those expensive times are and also when the cheaper times are, and sort of plan activities around that, like doing laundry or running the dishwasher. By creating little shifts in your routine, you could end up saving yourself $100 or so per month. The next biggest expense is food. And when it comes to saving money, there's a few things that I've done over the years to help reduce my grocery bill. The first one is meal planning. I plan my meals a month ahead at a time. You don't have to be this extreme with it. I just get paid on a monthly basis. So I need a bit more of a solid plan going into each month so I don't accidentally run out of money. But once I have my monthly meal plan, I then go through, I do an inventory of everything that I have currently and add everything that I'm going to need into my online grocery cart. And then each week, what I'll do is I'll check the cart and see if there's anything that's on sale. And then I'll use that to kind of guide what I'm going to make that week. So, for example, if I wanted to make gumbo and I see that shrimp and sausages are both on sale that week, I'm making gumbo that week. Another thing that I do is I use a cashback credit card for buying my groceries. And in the past, I've also used a student discount and an employee discount to save money on my groceries. So if you're currently a student, I would highly encourage you to look at the checkouts of your grocery stores. That's generally where they have signs that tell you what day of the week they offer their student discount. All you really need to do is show them your student card at the checkout, and you can get like 10% off, I think it is in most places. And back when I was a student, I was also working at Walmart, and at least at the time, Walmart gave a 10% discount, I think, on everything, but I mainly used it for groceries. So if you're working for a grocery store or Walmart and you have that discount, use it because it really does add up a lot, especially if you're going to be working there for years. You can save yourself hundreds to thousands of dollars just by using your discount. Another option for saving money on groceries that I recently found was that you could buy gift cards on Rakuten and earn cash back that way. They do have several grocery stores to choose from, and this could be a great option if you don't have any other sort of discounts or a cashback credit card. The cashback that they offer does fluctuate from time to time, so sometimes you may be able to get a better deal on them than others. But even having something as simple as 1% cashback is better than nothing, and it can really add up, especially if you have a big family. If you're interested in checking them out, I'll leave a link in the description. Another way that I save money on groceries is even once I have my plan and I know what I'm going to be getting that week, I still will always circle the meat section where they have the discounted meat that needs to be used, within a day or two, and see if they have anything that I'm going to need for my meals over the next couple of weeks. Because in my experience, this meat tends to be 30 to 40% off, which is great because meat tends to be the most expensive thing in the grocery store. And even if I'm not going to use it right away, I can just put it in the freezer and then take it out when I'm ready. And the final thing that I do to help reduce my grocery bill is using apps like Too Good to Go and Flash Food. Too Good to Go is more so geared towards like restaurants, but they do also have offers for grocery stores where they bundle food that needs to be consumed that day or within the next day and sell it to you at a discount. And again, with food like this, if you're not going to eat it right away, for the most part, you can just freeze whatever it is and then use it as needed. Now, for transportation, the main way that I save money on gas is using my cashback credit card. But again, if you don't have a cashback credit card, you can earn cashback through Rakuten. Another simple way that I save money on gas is using an app called Gas Buddy. which helps report the different prices at different gas stations. And I find this really helpful when I'm traveling to visit family because I pass through 2 to 3 different towns along the way. More often than not, one of those smaller towns will have gas that's 10 cents a liter cheaper than it would be if I filled up in the town that I live in. So using this just helps me kind of decide where best to fill up in order to save some money. But I will say, the biggest money saver when it comes to transportation that I had to learn the hard way was the importance of doing routine maintenance on your car. Because a couple of years ago, I knew my brakes needed to be replaced. They were squeaking all the time, and I knew it would be about $400 to replace them. It was just my front brakes, I believe. But around this time, I was getting ready to move, and I wanted to keep that $400 as a bit of a buffer for my move. So I put off replacing the brakes, but then instead of making a squeaking sound, my brakes started to make a grinding sound every time I used them. And when I took my car in to be fixed, it ended up being $1,100 to fix the problem because I had wrecked the calipers on my brakes. So I could have saved myself $700 if I had just dealt with the issue when it was a minor problem instead of putting it off because I didn't want to spend the money at the time. And finally, this is probably the most obvious way to save money on transportation, but walking or biking whenever you can. And if you're a student and a bus pass comes with your tuition, use it. This was something that I did when I was in college. My tuition automatically paid for a bus pass. My student card was my bus pass. And I had a car, but I would take the bus every day to and from school. And I would only use my car if I was traveling back home for the weekend or to go to and from work because I worked on the other side of town and taking the bus would take way too long. But by making that simple choice to take the bus to and from school, it saved a lot of gas money. And on top of that, I didn't have to pay for parking, which I think at a minimum back then it would have been like $5 a day, which can add up really quickly. So if that's an option that you have, I highly recommend that you take it. Now, aside from housing, food, and transportation, another big expense for most people is debt. I've talked a lot about how I used to be $48,000 in debt, and the way that I finally got a handle on that was through credit counseling. And if you're not familiar with this, all it took was a simple phone call, about 20 minutes, just talking with a credit counselor, figuring out what my options are. I went with a debt repayment plan. They were able to negotiate with my creditors and get them to agree to completely stop charging me interest, which saved me tens of thousands of dollars. And it allowed me to pay off my debt in only 4.5 years instead of the almost 2 decades it would have taken me if I had just struggled through it on my own. So, if you're in a similar situation where debt is taking up a large part of your paycheck, I highly recommend getting in touch with a credit counselor and just seeing what your options are because it could potentially free you up money now and also save you a decade or more of debt repayment. A few other things that I did to make it easier to live below my means were one, avoiding lifestyle creep. So, this simply means that anytime that I got a raise, instead of taking that extra money and using it to buy more stuff, I would keep my expenses relatively the same and then put most of that money towards my goals. So, whenever I got a raise, I would use the 80/20 principle. So, 20% of that new money that I was getting would go towards fun, and 80% of that would go towards funding my goals so I could reach them quicker. I find that this is a nice balance for me because I do get to have a bit more free money that I can use to explore new things or have more of the things that I enjoy. But I'm also able to feel good about spending that extra money because at the same time, I'm greatly increasing the money that I'm putting towards my goals. The second thing that I did was opening a high yield savings account. And I actually treat this more like my checking account. I have mine through Simple, and they don't charge any fees. Whereas before I had an account with one of the major banks and I was paying $25 a month and earning nothing in interest. So just by making that switch and not paying that $25 every month, that's saving me $300 a year. And then plus having an account where I'm earning interest at 1.75%, my money's now actually growing every month. So if you're currently in that same sort of situation where you're spending $25 or more per month on a bank account that's not giving you anything back and you want to check out Wealthsimple, I'll also leave them linked in the description. The third thing that I did was cut out little expenses that weren't really serving me. A big part of this was things like unused subscriptions. And anytime that I would cut out one of these expenses, I would then take that money that was freed up and then put it towards my fun money so that I could have more of the things that I actually enjoyed. And the fourth change that I made that was really small was simply driving to Starbucks or any sort of fast food restaurant where I was ordering takeout and picking it up instead of having it delivered through like Uber Eats. Because even on like a small Starbucks order, I found that this would save me like $4 per trip. And so by doing this, I was able to have the money that I had for takeout go farther because I wasn't paying all of these random little fees anymore for delivery. So, for the most part, the changes that I made were all really simple and easy to implement. The hardest part was just figuring out what all my options were and then deciding which ones to use. I didn't start off using all of these different strategies at once. I started off focusing on a simple change in each of those three big areas of housing, food, and transportation and then just kind of built it up from there. And now, by living below my means, I'm able to put about a quarter of my paycheck every month towards buying my first property. And I've just recently decided to take on a new position at the company that I work for, where I'm going to be making a little less money, but I'll have more job satisfaction. And this decision wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't already been living below my means. So, aside from living below my means, freeing up more money for fun and my goals, it's also given me more freedom and flexibility when it comes to choosing what I want to do for work. So, the biggest lesson that I have learned through living below my means is that I really didn't have to be miserable. I just had to get more creative. So, if you have any tips for living below your means, please leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.